Welcome to 2 cents Short of a Dollar, the show where we give our 2 cents and keep it 100. We're your host. That's Motiz, and I'm Rue in a different spot today, but making it work. We got to deliver this content to you guys. Maybe later on we do like a behind the scenes show how I got the recording done today, but that's neither here nor there. You guys are not here to hear about my life. But we're here to talk about this Riyadh season. I believe that's what it's referred to as. But Terrence Crawford headlining the card versus Israil Madrimov. It's going down August 3rd. And I want to jump into the predictions. But before I do, something that I noticed, which is kind of crazy. And, Terrence Crawford is clicked up very heavily with Shakur Stevenson. But since the Shakur Stevenson, Tim Bradley backlash, it seems like Tim Bradley, who's never really said much against Terrence Crawford, all of a sudden recently, I believe he's come out and there's a rumor that he's saying, the Terrence Crawford fight isn't selling. He didn't take advantage of the Errol Spence win, and I feel like this is a guy who couldn't say anything bad about, Terrence Crawford. Not that that's a bad thing, right? The economy is, this is an election year. The economy is up and down. People might not be willing to spend their money on tickets, right? I don't know. But nevertheless, I just find it shocking, the new tune of Tim Bradley. What do you think about that real quick before we jump into the predictions?
I did see that. I did see a snippet of that. And I was kind of surprised because, like you mentioned, Tim Bradley's always been Terrence Crawford's number one fan. From the days that, he said that he sparred Terrence Crawford, knew Terrence Crawford was going to be a champion, and all from that point on till recently. But I guess I don't know what's happening in the background. I don't know if there's a bit back and forth that's probably motivating him to kind of come out and say these things. And it's not like he's necessarily lying. We do know Terrence Crawford don't necessarily sell in comparison to his other stablemates, right? Or if you're comparing him to Errol Spence Jr. But coming from him, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't predict we'll get the pay-per-view numbers because I don't feel like we have for any of these Saudi cards. I don't believe anyone's come out with the numbers. But we know, previous to the Crawford Spence matchup, right? I think Spence was doing somewhere in the threes to between threes and 350s, right, in pay-per-view sales. Crawford, I think his highest was, what was his highest? Like 120 or something like that. Nevertheless, these numbers aren't really what's important, but the rumors are when him and Spence linked up, they did about 700,000 pay-per-view buyers, right? So I think people are saying, coming off of that momentum of that win, people are now saying, people were saying, you're pound for pound before, but now people are saying you're definitely the pound for pound guy, right? Even though some people may debate some other guys, but people are saying that we're seeing you everywhere. We're seeing you on all these podcasts, see you in wrestling, you know what I mean? So if it feels like the push is there, we've seen all-time great commercial. I don't know if we ever seen a better promo commercial than the commercial that they put on for this Crawford Madrimov fight. So it feels like the push is there. So for Tim Bradley to come out and say, the tickets aren't selling, I was like, man, that's, that one kind of threw me for a loop, you know what I'm saying? But he may be telling the truth.
Yeah. And I think for him to go all the way out the way, and that's not the only, because I see another source that said that too, that the tickets aren't necessarily selling. And I get it, right? Like, it's probably not all the way up to Terrence Crawford to sell out the under, but look at this card is stacked. So it's kind of like the card is stacked and you're clearly the best name on that card. You kind of got to put it on your back, right? Like,
Right. I feel that, but I mean, Crawford can only control what he can control, right? Yeah. So, people are going to buy it or people are not going to buy it, or the tickets, the pay-per-view, whatever it's going to be, I'm going to support it. But is he going to win this fight is what it all boils down to. Who cares about the numbers right now? Throw those all away right now. Is he going to win this fight versus Israil Madrimov at 154 pounds? Terrence Crawford's debut at 154 pounds. I know you've got some time to look at Israil. So you want me to make my prediction first? Or do you want to make your prediction first?
You go first, because I think we're probably going to align, but I'm curious to hear you.
All right.
So I'll let you go first.
So I can't say I've seen a ton of Madrimov, right? And I think he's only had somewhere between 12 and 14 fights. So there just isn't a ton of him unless you go back to his amateur pedigree days, right? But I'm looking at him and I'm like, dude could fight. He looks very strong. And all the workout videos, the pictures are coming out, dude looks big, right? I'm expecting on fight night him to be the physically bigger guy. But, man, I'm going to say something about Terrence Crawford that we haven't been able to say in a long, long, long time when it comes to this fight. Bud Crawford fans, please don't hate me. I think going into the fight, Terrence Crawford wins by decision. But I'm
Oh,
saying we haven't been able to say that in a long time because Terrence has been stopping everything. You know what I mean? He's been stopping
right.
everything. But I just think he's going to be more technically sound than Madrimov. Madrimov, I believe, is going to be the stronger guy. I think potentially we know Terrence Crawford's tendencies. We didn't see it in the Spence fight because I don't think Spence was able to deliver pretty much anything in that fight. But Terrence Crawford has a tendency of when he gets hit, he has to get his lick back. And I can
Yeah.
see Madrimov, hitting him with something and Terrence Crawford saying, I have to get it back. If he just wants to sit there and trade all day, that I don't know how that fight will go. But I'm expecting Terrence Crawford to be the more technically sound person. Madrimov likes to leap in, though, like some kind of erratic shots. And I'm expecting Terrence Crawford to use his angles and
Okay.
catch him with something. But I think he's gonna beat him on points. I don't think he's going to stop Madrimov. So as of right now, that's my prediction. Terrence Crawford, maybe unanimous decision.
Got you. Got you. That's a good prediction. I think that's probably in terms of a percentage base. I think that's the highest percentage you can go because Terrence Crawford is moving up in weight. And we know when you're moving up in weight, sometimes that can have an effect on, I guess, depending on how you're conditioned, right? If you can last all those rounds, i.e., Benavidez in his last fight, right? I think he underestimated those extra, several pounds, and he started to gas in the later rounds. He couldn't get the stoppage. I can very well see that happening with Terrence Crawford as well. But I'm probably going to go with Terrence Crawford by TKO. Late TKO, probably 11th round. And I only say that because Israil Madrimov, like he leaps in, he does like leaping hooks, and I think Terrence Crawford will make the necessary adjustments to catch him coming in. I do think Israel is probably going to make this fight tougher than what most people think because he's a switch hitter. He switched between both stances, and he does it seamlessly at times. And he's kind of awkward, throwing punches at weird angles that can kind of throw off Crawford. But I think, Crawford may have prepared himself enough to kind of see those shots come in, right? Especially in the lower weight classes when you're fighting guys that are probably a little less in weight, but they're quicker. But when you're moving up in weight, especially 154 pounds, that's when you start entering that stage of those little, heavy hitters, right? People are really punching up there. And I think that's the only question I have, right? Whether or not, Israel can take Terrence Crawford punches. If he can take his punches, and if he's cracking, and if he's the physically stronger guy, I think it's going to be really tough for Terrence Crawford. I think the intangible is going to play a big role because Terrence is moving up. Israel's comfortable at that weight, but I do feel like Terrence Crawford is more experienced. So I think that experience is going to show in the later rounds, and I think he's going to capitalize and probably get him out of there and get him hurt in the later rounds once he starts getting tired and kind of shoots, whether he's throwing uppercuts down the middle or catch him in between stances and start throwing shots down the pipe, especially from the southpaw position. So we will just have to wait and see. But I think this is going to be an interesting fight. Although I'm going to say this on the record, I would have preferred Terrence Crawford to fight a better opponent. I feel like this type of opponent, Terrence Crawford, should win this bout. But I'm not going to underestimate Israel from the eye test from what I've seen. So
Yeah. I think that's fair. Everybody wants to see him fight the bigger name, right? But I guess he has to go after someone with the belt per se, right? Tim Tszyu and Fundora, whatever their medical situation was. I know people are saying like, "Yo, Fundora, duck Crawford, and all this," but the reality is, if Crawford wanted to fight in August, and if the Turkey, I'm sorry, I might not be able to pronounce his last name,
Sheik,
Al
yeah,
Sheik, wanted him to fight in August medically. Zoo and Fundora just weren't cleared, Fundora being the victor, right? So I just don't think that was going to happen for August. However, I don't know if they travel to Saudi, what the commissioning bodies are and how these commissioning bodies
work.
translate over there. So I don't know, but I just don't think Fundora is going to be ready in time. So he had to take another opponent, right? So he went after one of the champions. So can't really knock him for that. But I want to kind of pose these questions, two questions for you. First one is, what if Madrimov shocks the world and wins this fight? Then what would you want to see next from Madrimov?
Then I'll probably want to see Madrimov probably unify with the
Unified.
belts. Recently, Jermell Charlo announced that he's coming back and he's
Mhm.
going to be at 154, which seems to be a growing glamour division at this time. So it could be a bunch of fights being made there. If Israel doesn't unify immediately, I wouldn't be mad at him taking a fight with Jermel, right? If Jermel just
Jamel.
comes in and just automatically, wants to take that fight, I wouldn't be mad at that. But I
Mhm.
would prefer that, Jermel, he took some time off, especially with that Canelo fight. He may come out and take a tune-up. I don't think he's from the same cloth that Errol Spence, where Errol Spence is like no tune-ups. You know what I mean? And Errol Spence is already kind of in that dilemma with Fundora in a
Mhm.
way. So I don't know how that's gonna. They're supposed to fight what in? Do we know November? I know it got set back, so maybe early next year,
Yeah,
January
yeah,
possibly.
2025. 2025.
So I don't know if Israel want to wait until that bout ends and then fight the winner of that, or if he doesn't, then he could probably, with Jamel entering the fray, he can probably fight
Mhm.
Jamel. If I'm being
Yeah.
honest.
I think a wild card at play would be Virgil Ortiz. I can see
Oh yeah,
Virgil Ortiz
Virgil
somehow getting
Ortiz
his name.
and Virgil Ortiz and Israel was actually supposed to fight prior to this Terrence Crawford and Israel fight being made. To be honest,
Okay.
yeah, Virgil was
I
supposed to
missed
fight.
that. I know Virgil had some comments, something about their sparring, but I didn't realize they were supposed to fight.
Yeah, they were supposed to fight, and then Terrence kind of came in and swooped that from under his belt. So that can be a fight. That fight can be made, but I don't know if Israel will want to kind of step back to face Virgil. That would be an
Mhm.
exciting fight. Don't get me wrong. Personally, as a fan, I would want to see that fight. But if we're
Yeah.
talking about like Israel moving up the chain and moving up the ladder, especially beating Crawford, I would probably think he should probably set his sights on really focusing on unifying or beating the big names.
Mhm.
But Virgil will be very competitive. That's a good name.
Yeah. And then the second question is the thing that most people suspect happens is Terrence Crawford wins, right? It seems to be a lot of matchups on the table. As you just mentioned, Jermell Charlo said he's coming back at 54. We know those guys had words. We know there's not necessarily good blood there. The Spence fight, let's not go into that because obviously Spence has to handle business if
With
Crawford
Fundora.
handles business for them to, realign. But let's talk about guys who are readily available now, right? So you got Jermell. Virgil, who's been saying Terrence Crawford's name for some time, right? So if Crawford wins this fight, who would you like to see Crawford get in the ring with next?
See, that's the tough part too, because these guys are fighting like once a year and a half, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the time, let's say Crawford wins, we probably won't see him fight again until next August. And at
Mm-hmm.
that point, the Fundora and Spence fight would have already happened. So
Okay.
then I think that's also the issue in terms of timeline. Now, if he's ready to get back in the ring sooner than that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's say Fundora and Errol Spence is out of the picture and he wants to get in the ring, let's say April of next year, right? Hypothetically speaking, I would probably say the next best option, personally for me, I'll probably say a fighter like Tim Tszyu. I mean, we got that issue that they have him and Jermel, but I don't know. Jermel, I feel like he got a lot going on.
You want to
Um,
see Jamel take a two-up fight first?
personally, me see how he looks coming down in weight, because then I don't want that excuse to happen. Like, oh, he had a long layoff. Now he's coming to fight Crawford. I want to see where Jermel is at before I actually see a fight, him jumping into a fight with Crawford. I'll still watch it, right? But I'll prefer Tim Tszyu. I would even like to see Virgil Ortiz, to be honest, before I
Yeah.
see Jermel. So
Yeah. So I was actually watching the Crawford and Andre Ward interview, and Crawford was saying he wants to fight more than once a year. He's saying it's been the fault of like the promotional companies and stuff that he hasn't been able to be as active as he would like to be. So maybe we don't have to wait until like next August or so, if what he's saying is correct, and if Turkey Alashish, whatever,
yeah,
His Excellency, if His Excellency, can keep forking out that cash and making these fights happen. But I think Tim Tszyu is probably the one, right? I
Mhm.
mean, there's a lot of dream matchups there. We would probably still want to see Tim Tszyu versus Jermel, but I think Tim Tszyu has been on a hot streak before the Fundora situation. Anybody who watched any of our videos know I wanted to see Tim Tszyu get the rematch, but I think Tim Tszyu versus Crawford is probably the one. So I'd have to agree with you there. Crawford wins, as most people expect him to do. I want to see him versus Tim Tszyu next.
Yeah. Well said. I agree too.
Yeah. So you guys like, subscribe, But before you do that, jump in the comment section. Tell us, who do you think is going to win between Terrence Crawford and Israil Madrimov? Tell us, how do you think that person is going to win? And with the victor, who do we want to see them get in the ring with next?